Just Play is a music metadata and intelligence company with a strict focus on African music. Archive data on African music with the goal of making them available to software developers, researchers, and all sorts of engineers, especially where we need higher intelligence on African music to serve the African audience.
That's the current president of the African Music Library and CEO of Just Play, Emmanuel Ogala. We'll hear more from him in just a minute. Producers like him are beginning to apply artificial intelligence in the music industry across the continent, not just in making sounds, but also for storing or archiving music. This comes against the background of music from Africa being bundled under the label world music or the generic label of African music, without recognizing the depth and variety of sounds across the continent. This is where artificial intelligence comes in, perhaps to fill in the gaps of knowledge, but also to provide access to the music. But the power and reach of artificial intelligence can do good and it can do damage. There are particular fears that it could disenfranchise musicians, robbing them of income and ownership. How realistic are those fears, though? Will AI help or hinder African music production? Let's hear from Emmanuel.
The world has always seen African music as a single entity. It's not. African music is very diverse and very complex. In fact, there's no such thing as African music as a genre. There are over 138 genres that we've documented at Just Play with sizable number of audiences. They have their own quirks, they have their own nuances, and they are complex in their own right and deserve to be studied in their own right.
What do you use artificial intelligence for?
Artificial intelligence is very critical to what we're doing. Being able to annotate these songs to say, this is all the properties they have is not possible with humans. And so we have to train a lot of AI models to understand what we want and then pass our data through them. And then they have them annotated to give us the final data that we can then use in making these decisions.
But it's been done by humans up to now.
Yes, I agree with you. It's been done by DJs, it's been done by a lot of music curators, but it's not just possible to do it at the scale that we do it, when there are millions and millions of songs to look at. And one of the challenges also we face with music in Africa is most of our problems have always been solved by people in the West, and they always see African music as African music. Up until recently, it was only one genre, world music, that described everything that wasn't Western. And then recently we have African music to describe everything African. But African music is so diverse from Cape Verde to Mauritius. There are just too many genres in Africa that a lot of people enjoy that cannot be just classed as African music.
I mean, AI is only going to go by what it knows and what it has, in the sense of it will only know as much as is available to it. Now, if we're saying that there isn't a lot of information around for AI to make those decisions, how do we ensure that this particular machine, because it is machine learning, is accurate?
First of all, the human knowledge. We source the humans who are experts. The process is you transform what the human knows into AI, and then the AI does what it does, brings back results. The human reviews, is it correct? Is it not correct? What's wrong? We feed that back. So we have that continuous feedback loop that continues training the AI. And so it takes time and data back and forth. And after a couple of training sessions, the AI becomes quite as good as the human.
Well, I suppose the question would then be, so why do we need the AI? But Tabu Osusa is a Kenyan musician, and I have a quote here from him. He's worried about ownership. He says, once you take music from Ghana or Nigeria, who owns the music? How would you find out where the original creators are and ensure that they are credited? And he says, actually, it's theft through the back door.
I see that. If you really don't understand how it works, you think that's possible. But
I think that's most people in the world who don't quite understand how it works and only see it as a process that robs them of something. It's a serious concern.
Yeah, it's a very serious concern. And what we do is we keep both editorial and contextual metadata. And so editorial metadata tells us who did what and when, who was the musician behind this, who was the producer. who's the songwriter, who's the shekere player.
This is another quote from Tabu Osusa. He says, people don't study music in Africa. They're born with it and live it. It's spiritual and it's always alive. It changes over time. It's dynamic. And I think the fear for him is that AI would sort of freeze or cement music, and he feels that it will be taken away from African musicians. Seems like people feel like AI is stealing something from them.
Yes, people do feel that way, but I feel differently. I look at AI as a tool and not the product. AI can make music, and I see where that fear is coming from, because recently there's been the hype about GPTs, which can transform text to a full music. Right. And then if I, who's not a musician, for instance, can just use text to generate music, then it begins to compete with the musician who does music on a daily basis as a living. And that competition is what most people are afraid of. I see AI as a tool. GPT is just a very tiny bit of the AI world. Anybody that makes music right now and record music, if you use any software to make music right now, you generate a lot of tones, you generate sections of music. These have all been done with algorithms for quite a long time. I also worry for African music because as part of our documentation, up until the 2000s, you could document someone who plays the shekere, for instance, or a bata drum player, or a conga player, something very African and unique. But right now, in most music that are made these days, you don't find those players, those human elements in making music don't exist because they are digitally produced by some sort of algorithm. But the future I see also is that it's going to breed some kind of new skills within the African music industry, in the sense that I don't believe AI can make any genre in African music as good as the humans who really do them, because AI depends on human knowledge.
There are also fears about people losing not just the skills of, for instance, having a shekere player, and if there's AI that can do it, why train somebody to do it themselves, but also just the economics of it. So unregulated sampling methods, which will enable recording companies in the West to make money while leaving some creatives in African villages to languish, which is not just a problem that might become prevalent because of AI. It's a problem in general, isn't it, for African creatives, where people do use their creative capital and make money out of it without them being able to do it. How do you address that? Royalties is a big issue.
Yes, royalty is a big issue. And, the AI development has developed faster than how we initially conceived of licensing and royalty. But first, people are able to steal because we are not represented at the table, at the global music industry data table, where if I use a sample in my music, right, a radio station, for instance, in the West, are able to identify the music they are using just by running a software that listens to their playlist that they are playing, and royalty is then disbursed later on. And so, part of what we do is also the ability to identify where these samples have been used. If a sample is used in Canada, for instance, a radio station in Canada should be able to run a standby software that just listens to their music and is able to tell you, okay, this actual record belongs to person A, but this record contains sample from another artist, and that artist is, B. That artist could be African. But if that software does not have this metadata we're talking about, then that becomes impossible. The metadata, it can only make decisions based on what it knows, based on what's in this database. And right now, Africans are not, very much represented in the digital world of music.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
That's Emmanuel Ogala, current president of the African Music Library and the CEO of Just Play.